Welcome back to the Long Way Back podcast. I'm your host, Timmy Long. Today we have Tommy as a co-host.
Hi, lads.
Hi, Tom. Today we have a guest who has came all the way from Texas. His name is Declan Murphy, soon to be Dr. Declan Murphy.
Hopefully,
and called Space Deck on his Instagram profile.
That's right.
But Declan is in recovery amongst, you're an academic and you're here to just talk about your own life and give people a little bit of a breakdown of who you are and the different stuff that you've been doing in your life. And also, you're in Texas based on a podcast we done with a lady by the name of Joanna Ivers, who spoke about a college based in Texas that is recovery based, and you went over there because of that.
Yeah.
No, you'll be able to break it down. But listen, how's things anyway? I know you had a tough time getting here because today we have the Bruce Springsteen concert on, and there's all the roads are closed. So it was, and then I was in another podcast, so I couldn't answer the phone. So you were obviously
I was having a relapse of panic attacks.
I tell you now, you weren't on your own there.
Tommy was the same. Tommy was out. Tommy got stuck in Middleton.
Mahon.
I was at Mahon.
And the rain that was coming down was no man's business. I was like, I'm going to cancel.
Yeah.
I have to
The
go
rain.
home, I was there.
Yeah.
But
The rain and the traffic and the Bruce Springsteen heads.
It's good to have the two of you here anyway.
Serious
Do
cocktail.
you want to give us a little bit of a breakdown of your maybe upbringing, your siblings and yourself, and maybe school a little bit?
Yeah, so as he said there, I'm Declan Murphy. I'm from Laois, Durrow, County Laois. Grew up there. I'm 44, so I grew up in the 80s. And I have two brothers and a sister and mum and dad, and they're all well and healthy, thank God. So I suppose my interest in your podcast and this work comes, I suppose, from a personal perspective and the kind of professional side as well. I'd be very interested in studying the impact of trauma on adult life, so childhood trauma in particular, and how that impacts in later life. So the studies that I'm doing at the moment in Texas, as you mentioned there, look at the link between childhood trauma and addiction. So obviously that's a well-established relationship. There's a direct correlation there. So there's not new in that sense, but where I kind of come in is my studies are on the role of education on recovery. So how does education impact people's recovery? And also, like my whole interest is in education. I'm a teacher as well. So I've been a teacher for the last 15 years, secondary school. So after 10, maybe 12 years of teaching, I think it was, I decided to train in psychotherapy, adolescent psychotherapy. So I'm kind of that dual role in a school where I was the teacher and also a counsellor.
And then you also had your own lived experience and that.
Yeah.
Which is important.
Very important, yeah. So I'd mentioned that to you there, Timmy. So I think basically I loved teaching. I really enjoyed it.
Growing up, was school something that you enjoyed based on stuff that was going on in your life back then?
Yeah, so it was an interesting thing, really. School was, for me, it was a sense of normality. So school was actually a nice place for me as a kid, because
in comparison to home.
Yeah, so home life was tricky. As little kids, basically, my mother had bipolar disorder, and in the 80s in Ireland, it was very fucking stigmatized. It still is stigmatized. We have to be honest. It still is. But back in then, it was
no help.
Yeah, it was brutal back then. So my mom, thankfully, she's in great health now. So it's great to be able to say that. At the time, though, the illness was pretty bad, So there was a lot of kind of chaos. That's the nature of the illness. So home life was fairly stressful.
And how did that impact you then as a young person that you understand today?
Yeah, so impact? it kind of, I grew up very kind of there was a sense of hypervigilance about me because you'd be always watching
Mm.
because of my mom's illness in those early years, which are fierce important. That was when my mother would have had a low period of bipolar. It goes up and down, as you know, that illness. But during her low periods, there would have been suicidal ideation. And as little children seeing that, you've no
Mm.
you've no awareness of what's going on. You're just literally in survival mode.
Yeah.
And in that panic, it was a panicked environment where you were always watching to see if she was okay.
What's going to happen next?
What's going to happen next? That unpredictability. So that really that was kind of like I suppose like the culture of the house. Yeah.
And it's known for young people, kids and stuff,
Mhm.
because of appearance, maybe actions and stuff, to blame themselves as well. Would that have ever, was that something that you later kind of established about yourself,
Yeah.
that you became maybe the people pleaser or the clown or anything like that,
Yeah.
because of maybe
Yeah.
because I actually blamed, I thought I was bad
Yeah.
based on what was happening to me. I
Yeah.
didn't have the comprehension as a young person to understand that I was living with somebody in an environment that was, they were just ill, they were
Yeah.
sick, they had
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
were struggling in their own life, and
Yeah.
they couldn't manage,
Mhm.
you know. Was that something that you noticed later on in life?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I noticed, like, I never blamed myself. Actually, I always knew that, you know, my mom's illness wasn't my fault. But what I did have was a sense of responsibility. I felt like it was my job to make sure my mother stayed alive and well, you know. So in that sense, I had this kind of sense that I have to make sure Mammy's okay. That was my role. And I think what happened then is that kind of I suppose survival skill or personality type kind of trickled out. Even when my mother got well, which she did, once they got it was lithium really that was the game changer for my mother. Once that drug was kind of introduced to her, she was flying it.
Great, and
And
that's
has
great
been,
to hear.
yeah, and has
So
been
fair
flying it
play.
ever since 30
Yeah.
years ago, you know.
Powerful.
Deadly. But I think what happened then was, you mentioned people pleasing there to me. Yeah, like I think that would have come up for me. I would have, I think, translated that kind of feeling of like, oh, I have to take care of mom to fucking everyone.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I always felt like I wanted to make sure everyone was okay. So it was a big
And
burden.
forgetting about your own needs
Exactly.
then. Yeah.
A huge burden on a small little child.
Would that be the same today, or do you look after it? Do you mind?
Well, it
The
became
reason I ask,
yeah.
no, because I have the same tendency
tendencies,
to
yeah.
mind everybody else,
Yeah.
and forget about myself.
Yeah, it definitely does still play out to a certain extent, but it's amazing to talk here about this, because that, say, strategy or coping mechanism that I had stayed with me all my life. So even though my mother was well, I still had this kind of like feeling that I have to make sure everyone's okay. And I would detect anyone's mood. I would be like a fucking razor sharp.
You're tuning into
Yeah.
their energy,
Yeah.
their body language, something that they
Yeah.
said. You're tuning into every
Everything.
aspect of
Yeah,
them.
it's hypervigilance.
Yeah.
So you're tuned
I'm
into
still like that
I
today.
can be like that myself.
I'm still like that.
Yeah, that's a trauma
Yeah.
response. It's as
Mm.
simple as that, lads.
Yeah.
That's basically a trauma response. There's no doubt about it. And you start thinking then, Jesus, what are they mad at me?
Yeah.
You think you've caused problems, but people are just going about their business and feeling stressed. But we internalize it because in that little childhood place where we were watching the environment, because the mother of the house sets the tone. And if the mother's off, the whole house is off.
Mhm.
So yeah, that came up for me.
Mm.
And I think really then what changed for me, or the growth came for me, was, I suppose, moving to America was a big thing. Moved to America 2 years ago to take on this PhD. And that was a huge turning point in my life, because I'm 44, my mother's 78, my father's 84. but I still kind of felt responsible for them. So now I'm like being offered this opportunity to go to Texas to do this PhD. It was a huge challenge to actually let go. And what was amazing was that my mother, my father, and my brothers and my sister were all so fucking supportive. I'm sorry for cursing, lads.
Of course, well,
It's shocking.
Yeah.
And my sister said to me, "Don't be cursing, Deck. You curse a lot." But they were so supportive. When I got offered that opportunity, the scholarship, like I got a full scholarship to do this PhD. So they were like, they gave me every blessing, every encouragement to go and do it. So myself and my wife and my little girl Rosa, she's 4. We moved 2 years ago. So I'm 2 years in now. And I'm home now for a few weeks to spend time with mother and father
Yeah.
to make sure they're okay.
I can completely relate to
Yeah, it's
that.
interesting, isn't it?
Worried about. I remember when I went to France. I was about 16, I think, 15. I don't know, 16. I was in, and I was in a home before that in the West Cork area for young people who were just caught up in the probation services
Yeah.
and from the crimes that they've committed. So I used to be lying awake at night inside in the bed, wondering whether the back door of the house was locked or the front door was locked, worried about my mum or worried about my 2 brothers to make sure that they were okay. And that kept going on, and that kept going on always.
Adulthood.
That never stopped.
Yeah.
That never changed.
Yeah.
Always just worried about whether the back door was locked. And that continued then into my own home when I was in prison, wondering whether Nicole had locked the back door, whether the kids were okay. You know, like it went as bad as like if she didn't answer the phone, I was completely gone. Like my head was gone. I went to panic thinking she's after wrapped around another car on the dual carriageway on the way to Dublin.
Yeah.
Coming up to visit me in the prison. You know, so that stuff really stays with you. It never
Yeah.
really kind of leaves, does it?
No, and
Until you become aware of it and you can catch it when it comes up and just notice it and understand
Yeah.
it.
And you see, what you're describing there, Timmy, at its heart is insecurity. So when we were little children, you know, as you had said, your mom had a similar illness. We weren't nurtured with that sense of security. That's emotional needs that you have as an infant and as a little 2 or 3-year-old. You know, you're judging the world based on how things are at home. That's your first impression of the world. So is the world safe or is it dangerous? That's basically our nervous system's 2 lines. It goes into those 2 places. Are we safe or are we not? So if you're told in childhood, you know, everything's okay, you're nurtured, you're cuddled, all that kind of thing, you grow up then with this sense of like, you know, you don't have that catastrophizing and that worrying, you know, but when you come out of childhood where things mightn't have been as secure, your head is just wired that way. You're wired literally to think the worst, even when, like you said, you know, if someone doesn't answer the phone, you go straight to that worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And that's really trauma responses again, you know.
And I know some people in their 50s and 60s that think that way still, and they're still. I know what's going on for them because of my own.
Yeah.
But I'm aware of it. But for me, they're still living it.
Yeah.
And I don't actually feel if I try to explain it, they would understand and take it on board.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're just caught up in that as the story and that's their life.
The narrative, yeah.
You know, which is sad. It's really sad.
Yeah.
But it is. But can we?
There's advantages to it too, though. You know, so like a lot of children with adverse childhood experiences, they come out with these coping skills that make them phenomenal, you know. So it's important to, and it's very important to me to talk about that, is that when we think of childhood trauma, we think of the worst of stuff, you know, but children are very adaptable. The brain is adaptable. It's malleable. It can change. So what you come out of that childhood maybe with a lot of struggles, but you also come out with savage strengths and empathy, resilience, and there's great studies on it called post-traumatic growth. So that's very important to me, you know, to shed light on, you know, because this isn't a pity story or like, you know, but for me, it's important to say that out of adversity, there's great character building, there's great strength, there's great skills, there's great resources,
Wisdom,
wisdom.
which can be shared to give other people
Yeah,
hope.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, you might say, oh, geez, I had to grow up quick. And I did. But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. Neither would my siblings.
Not knowing,
No way.
not knowing the strength you have because
Absolutely.
of such and such and such.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
wouldn't change it because.
No.
And I was recently speaking to somebody about my life. The only thing I change in my life is the pain I caused other people. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would I stop? Would I take away anything that happened to me? No, because I needed all of that pain to push me in the direction of recovery.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if one section of that emotional pain was taken from the collective amount of pain that was after happening, the rock bottoms and different stuff, maybe I would have never got it.
Yeah.
You know, but there is, I always do say this, if there was anything I could take back, it was any emotional or physical pain that I caused anybody in my life back then, particularly my wife. You know, because she put up with a lot of shit with me and people that didn't deserve things, innocent people. You know, just fucking things happening to them for no reason whatsoever, and me not even knowing that I'd done something. That's a long time ago, like, but I still to this day, if I come across somebody that may have been some form of conflict or whatever, I will approach them, even though there's fear, internal fear. I'll approach them.
That's humility,
and I have to approach them because they need to know that that person today is not the same person back then, and the apology has to be coming from the right place. It can't be something I'm only doing because of 12-step program. It has to be something that I'm doing
from the heart
because I really, really mean it. Because I now understand what pain is myself. I didn't back then because I was cut off, but I do know, and it's important that I can show somebody that I'm sorry for something that I caused to them. You know, bringing it right back is small with Declan. School, what way was school for you?
As a kid in school.
Yeah,
because that's what did you ask me that? I thought you went astray.
The conversation kind of went somewhere else, but that was important.
Yeah, school for me was great. In the sense that there was great structure and routine, and I wouldn't say I was a bright kid or anything, but I was able to get through. But I knew, like you had talked about, the unpredictability, right? When you don't know what's going to happen next. In school, I did. It was all like, we're going to go into school, we're going to learn our...
We were safe in there.
Yeah, exactly. It was safe and it was predictable. But I didn't know what was going to be going on when I went home. Or when I was in school, I was thinking about, you know, what's it going to be like when I go home? And one of the things I often remember, and I think this is maybe why I ended up becoming a teacher, like when I was that student in school, there would have been times... I was probably 8, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, those kind of years. It was the early years, like, and I'd be sitting at the table, the back of the classroom or wherever, and I'd be looking out the window, you know, and the teacher would be reading, and I'd know the teacher was going to ask me to read, like, but my head would go out the window, and I'd just be wondering, is Mom okay?
Yeah.
All right, and the next thing the teacher said, Declan, carry on there. And I wouldn't have a clue where I was because, you know, so the teacher then would say, you weren't following the book, you know? And I was just this little kid there that was like worried that, is my mom going to be alive when I get home? But that teacher may or may not have known about, maybe they did or they didn't. But the point I'm making is schools that are trauma informed know that there's kids in the classroom that are traumatized and their behaviors are not this like kid who just isn't following the book because he doesn't care. It's because the kid is worried about something and you know, so it's harder if you've experienced childhood trauma. Your brain isn't in that learning zone like everyone else's. Like if you're getting all the support at home, right? Have you got your homework done? Do you need help with your homework? and you go into school confident because you know what's going on. But if you don't get that at home and things are kind of chaotic, sure, school life is, you're not at the same level, and it's not your fault. It's literally the environment around you. So I'm very passionate about equalizing the bar there for all these children that come into school every day who are going through serious stuff in their home life, but they still get up every morning and they get into school and they do their best, but life might be really hard for them. So that's important to me, that area. So yeah, school for me was I enjoyed it, and I loved sport, and I loved my friends. I had a very happy kind of, do you know what? I had a happy childhood apart from the kind of the stress and the adversity around I suppose the effects of mental illness.
In the
Not
home, in the
in the
family
home.
home.
Yeah. Other than that, we had a great
So,
country
so
lifestyle.
you're a recovering addict as well.
Recovery is a kind of a word for me that I'd be.
Let's just say you don't drink or
No,
drug
I
anymore.
don't drink. I
Well,
don't
and-
drink.
yeah.
I don't do drugs, and I used to party when I was a young fella.
Was that the
But
escape?
yeah, it's funny like that. I was saying that to you. I think the trauma that was in my body, and you talk a lot, Timmy, about energy. So all that energy of the fear and the panic that was there in childhood, right? When my mother settled and everything was calm, all the energy was still in my body, right? So it's fascinating, really. As soon as things got calm at home, my body started expressing this kind of energy that it was panic attacks, basically. My body started releasing all that adrenaline and norepinephrine, all these chemicals. But I didn't know that back in the 90s. And it coincided then with me being 16, 17. So now I'm out drinking. So it never, alcohol never sat well with me. Going back to the people pleasing, like I was 16, 17, I started drinking and all my mates are drinking. I didn't even like it. I didn't even like alcohol, but I stayed drinking because we were all doing it. And then it just became your life. It just was so consuming. So I was just a weekend drinker, but what happened to me, unlike say, well, I don't know, it seemed that all my mates wouldn't have hangovers, whereas I would be just dying from it. Absolutely dying. You know, when you're young, you don't really be as sick, like, but I was right from the beginning. I knew that it wasn't good for me soul, but me spirit, like. But as I said, as a 16, 17-year-old with people pleasing tendencies, I wasn't able to just kind of go, I don't like this, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Afraid in case you didn't fit
Yeah,
in.
exactly.
Because you would have lost your peer group as well. 'cause
Exactly.
You would have had nothing in common.
Yeah. And it would be, it's very difficult in Ireland in the 90s, as you know, sure.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it was everything. So that was a huge, huge moment, really. That 17, 18-year-old me, as such, was, you had this like anxiety racing through my body, and now I'm introduced to alcohol. So yeah, so that was really.
And you know, sometimes alcohol gives people the self-esteem, gives them the confidence, the will to be able to speak to a girl.
Yeah.
You know, what were the gains of drinking alcohol for you in relation to maybe giving you help to come out of your shell a bit?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's funny. Like, I was asked that question, the very same question there a few months ago. Like, what did alcohol give you? Because I drank for 10 or 15 years, whatever it was. And it didn't give me a whole lot. It gave me group, as you mentioned, the peer group.
And lots of hangovers.
And lots of hangovers, lots of gigs. I was mad into music, so it seemed to go hand in hand. So like it was important to me going to festivals and bars and to listen to live music. And it's funny, Timmy, do you know what? Now that I can see, what it gave me was, what I noticed was when my mates were drunk, they would be more emotionally free. Whereas I was actually emotionally free, even though I had all that anxiety and panic, I was still very transparent. I wasn't shy with my mates. I'd always talk, you know. And I noticed that when my mates would be drunk, I'd be like, fuck, they're coming out of themselves.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, this is deadly. Like, I'm really getting close to them. And then the next day, they'd be gone way back into the shit.
They wouldn't even talk.
They'd be afraid to look at you, you know. And that was a lot of
The
it,
night
actually.
before they'd be hugging you and tell you how much they loved you.
Yeah.
Especially if
after
they were on
spirits.
ease.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Especially if they were after taking a load of ecstasy
Yeah,
back in the
in
day.
the 90s, yeah.
90s.
it was like the family that, you know, that's what happens. Like you find your family outside of the family, and that's what we were, you know, a really close group of friends, like, and that was really the emotional thing, actually.
So what happened after that? Did you go on to college and
Yeah.
after school and stuff?
Yeah, I did. So I managed to get through. It's funny, actually, there was a paper I was reading just before I came home. It was a paper that looked at the impact of childhood trauma on academic performance. So basically what we're talking about, they've proved it now, not that we didn't know, but the science is there now to say that, like, you know, kids who come from homes where there's trauma don't do as well. Can you believe that? It's not fucking rocket science. Like, why would they do as well when they're not getting the same supports? But what they found, which is very interesting, was the subject that they were most affected by was maths.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So basically, kids who had trauma in their childhood, maths was really hard for them, and I was the very same. I couldn't do maths. It just seemed to be something I just could not get it. But anyway, I got through, and I went to college. Yeah, I went to Carlow and did a degree down there in psychology and philosophy. So
Did you like that?
yeah, I did because I was so aware of how people, like, like yourselves, I could read people because I was reading the environment from a very young age. I just had this kind of intuitive skill of being able to kind of I was very interested in people, but also could read them very well. It was natural to me. So then when I actually started reading the science of it, it was very interesting to me. So yeah, I drank away in college, but got through, got my degree. And then after the degree, I think there was basically a strike. The teachers were striking. It was 2002, 22 years ago.
22, yeah.
Holy God.
You just have to put
So
putting things into perspective.
yeah, fright there now myself 22 years ago. So I went in subbing. If you had a degree, you could sub. And I just straight away was like, this is deadly. I like this. So then I went and did the masters in Maynooth and trained to be a teacher in history and religion and English. They were my subjects. And yeah, I loved teaching straight away. I taught in Tala for 10 years. So
tell me a small bit about that, based on teaching in Tala, and Tala has its own issues around different stuff as well. Drugs, alcohol, and violence, and everything that goes on in an area where you've all that together, right?
Yeah.
Poverty.
Poverty.
So how did you bring the psychotherapy, the philosophy, your lived experience into the school?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say was that I worked up there for 10 years, and I couldn't speak highly enough of the people and the kids of Tala. Like any working class area. I don't like that terminology either. Working class, but areas where there's social disadvantage. I always found the kids to be the most real there.
And the people.
And the people, yeah.
And the people.
Absolutely. So I loved it there. I loved the kind of no bullshit of it. You know, it was real, you know, and the kids were really genuine. So I suppose you mentioned the adversity, the poverty, the hardship. There was a lot of it there. And I think what happened fairly early in my career, the kids that would be vulnerable would come to me. And you know, maybe class would end and the kids said, Mr. Murphy, can I talk to you for a minute? So that was happening a lot. Yeah. A lot. And that inspired me then to go on and train and be a teacher or a counselor, because it was natural kind of progression.
And how did that pan out for you? How did you feel like with your own kind of lived experience? How did you feel when you could see kids coming in you that you could relate to? Like
Yeah.
that must have been very, very tough emotionally for you.
It was tough, and it wasn't until I did my training that I realized how tough it was.
Okay.
I think all teachers have that kind of sense of the kids that's in their classrooms, and I had that as well. But I suppose if you're working in an area where there is a lot of poverty, just by statistics, you're going to have more kids that are struggling. So it was tiring and it was exhausting. And also I had that kind of it was a vocation to me. Teaching was a vocation.
Yeah.
So I gave as much as I could, and then I realized, okay, I need to, I basically took a career break from it to go and train, so that I would be better equipped to manage myself in it, because you have to mind yourself. If you can't look after your own self, you're going to burn out. So
And the reason I asked that question is because you can get really emotionally attached to somebody
yeah,
that's going through stuff, a child particularly,
yeah,
and you can relate to them because
Yeah.
of your own stuff. Like you can be going home after work and
Worrying
you could be
about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's that's difficult,
That's
right?
a great point, Timmy. And I'll tell you what I had there, which was very good, was really good principle. See, if you have a good principal in a school, he'll spot that or she'll spot that. And they'll say, like refer them maybe. Because you have a school counselor, but you see what happened as well is, number one, if you're in a location where there's more poverty, there's going to be more kids struggling. But then the pandemic brought up a load of it as well.
Yeah.
So, like, what I saw after the pandemic was like a huge increase in the amount of kids that were struggling. So before the pandemic, you could almost predict the kids that were struggling. But after the pandemic, you wouldn't be able to pick out. You might, like, basically kids who had all the supports were still struggling. It affected them, especially the teenagers, because they were at that really important stage of development when the next thing, bang, the house is closed, you can't go out the door.
Yeah.
So they lost. I really do feel for those kids. They were kind of the generation that were doing their junior cert and leaving cert. They had no debs. They had no, they didn't even have a leaving cert or junior cert. Like, it was all really kind of interrupted, and it disrupted their development. And I know people who are in universities as well that say to me that they can spot those kids that lived the pandemic, because they went into college, right? But they hadn't even had a DEBS, or they hadn't had those natural, what's the word, milestones. Because you need those milestones to recognize, wow, I've done my leaving cert, and now I'm going to go on a summer holiday, or I'm going to have me DEBS. They didn't have that. And now all of a sudden they're in college and they're lost,
That's a tough one there.
It is a tough one.
That's tough.
Yeah. So what's happening in the universities, and it's in America as well, where I am, a lot of those kids, like,
Because the sense of what you've been working towards
yeah,
is gone.
Yeah,
Like when
Yeah,
when I
that's right.
finished my degree, I was after spending 8 years in education, from doing the junior cert in the prison, working my whole way up further education, level 4, level 5, level 6, right?
yeah,
Then going on to third level education, doing 4 years in third level,
brilliant.
and then I had no graduation.
Oh,
I never
man.
got
So you
handed a
went
piece.
through it
I
yourself?
went through it myself. I can
Oh,
relate to
Timmy,
it.
I
You
didn't
see.
know that.
And
So you know then
I know.
exactly the feeling of
yeah,
it.
and it's shit because, and I'm even getting emotional thinking of it, because
Yeah.
I wanted to be on that stage with that piece of paper with my
Yes.
kids looking in the audience
Yeah.
with a smile in their face,
Yeah.
saying
It's
like,
something tangible.
that's me dad.
Yeah.
Do you know? But I didn't get that opportunity, and I did contact the college outside, wanting to get my opportunity to be handed my cert on the stage with my gown, and I was told that it's happening this time, that time, and it never happened, and I don't want to be pressuring anybody, like, but I do believe that anybody that did do finish their graduation in around those years, should get the experience, because it was the experience. And I'll give you an example of somebody that did get the experience. A friend of mine, he was actually on the podcast before this. After he graduated college, like they went back to a hotel, family and friends, and they had a lovely little buffet of food.
Yeah.
And they made a big deal out of it. And it's fucking so admirable of what happened with him. I would have loved it, because not only would I have been the first person to even
Go to college.
go to college. I mean, none of us even done a leaving cert. None of us, me and my brothers. None of us. And nor me, I had to go back to FAST, youth reach, and do mine. And I only done the basic subjects. So it is, that must have took a lot from a lot of children as well. Even the, as you said, they're the 18, 19-year-olds going away for the old summer holiday. They had that planned, I'd say, from the year before. Then it's gone.
Yeah.
No, all of a sudden they're locked in their rooms.
And when you were saying that to me, what came up for me there was even the pictures. You know, you didn't get that moment on the stage with your clothes and your graduation cert.
Because you're missing on the wall.
And you want to be proud of it. You want to say, yeah, it's real. Because that's what the pandemic did. It was like this time warp, wasn't it? Where, and now even I don't think the world even processed it. It was like
just got on.
Suddenly one night they come out in the news and said it's over, and then I
think it just disappeared.
Yeah,
kind of slowly. You wouldn't even hear too much about COVID anymore. And I'm sure that there are people still getting sick from it and even dying. And like my heart goes out to any families that have somebody that's sick from it and they might die from it. But you don't really hear that anymore. You really don't.
Yeah, it had an impact. I'm just thinking, a lot of the kids, it's just a memory coming back now as well. A lot of the kids, I remember when the masks were, you didn't have to wear the masks anymore. So a lot of the students were still wearing them. Said it was a lot of the younger girls kept wearing them. And I found out then later on, like they became, when you're a teenager, you're insecure by nature. Yeah. So they actually liked it, wearing the masks, because they might have had acne, or they might have had, when you're a teenager and you have spots and all that. So I found that very kind of sad, that there was a lot of these kids had become ashamed of themselves. We all feel that as a teenager, but it was just something that I'll always remember, the kids that kept wearing the masks, and they were saying it was because they were still afraid of the virus, but it was actually they felt comfortable because no one could see them. So
a lot of adults still like that too.
What's that?
There's a lot of adults felt like that too.
Absolutely.
Like they might have usually felt maybe social anxiety in crowds of people and stuff, and now they have the mask on, and that's not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah.
Or somebody I've seen people that are caught up in addiction. People who are destroyed from addiction and the shame of the way they are now because of the condition of their physical appearance, because of the drugs and the alcohol. They wear a mask going around the place still. Tommy, you've seen it.
The pull-up.
So that's actually still happening.
Yeah.
That's still...
So a lot of delivery people do it as well. They still have that.
Well, that's based on them being in different environments, I suppose, Tommy.
So they're protecting themselves as well,
So Declan, how did things pan out after the pandemic for you then on a personal level?
Yeah, I think so. The pandemic finished up in 21, I think it was March or April 21. I was out sick from work for a while. And it was during that time I was listening to my favorite podcast at that time, right? I was out walking my dog, lovely dog Pep, which I must mention to you about him actually. And I was going through a difficult time at that particular time. So I went out for my walk with my dog, and I'm listening to my favorite podcast, Timmy and James, and they had a guest on who I was aware of, Dr. John Ivers. So I'm like, this is great. Now I'll go for a walk and we listen to that. So halfway around the podcast, I heard Professor Johanna say, "Oh, there's this great PhD program in Texas, and they're very, very good for students who are in recovery or who have any experience with, battles with addiction and that sort of thing. Very pro-student kind of approach." And then she said, "It's in, what's the name of it?" She said, "Texas Tech University is the name of it." And straight away, I was like, sure, I knew that university because it's where my wife is from.
Oh, she's from that area.
She's from that very city. So I got married to my wife 10 years ago. She's from Texas. We met here in Ireland. But like 10 years later, I'm listening to this podcast, going through a bit of a difficult period at the time. And I knew that I wanted to do a PhD on this subject. I just was waiting to see. I was actually speaking with Professor Katrina O'Toole in Maynooth, and I was looking at doing one in Ireland, but then this landed, and I was like, Jesus, I know that place. So I went home, Googled it, and it just was one of those things, lads, where if you wanted to stop it, it couldn't be stopped. It was literally like the doors just flung open. I got like a full scholarship. I got everything. And then it was just like, Jesus, we may go.
Explain to people what the PhD is and what the label, what the actual.
So it's a PhD in addiction recovery.
Okay.
So it's one of the only PhD programs in the world on recovery, addiction recovery. So it's a phenomenal program, and I suppose what's very special about it and what makes it one of the kind of most well-known or established, and that's why Professor Ivers knew about it, was they support students in recovery. So in every university in Ireland and all over the world, you're going to have students who go back to education after a period of addiction. And they're what's called a hidden population on any college campus. They're kind of, they're a stigmatized group that keep themselves to themselves, but they're in recovery. So they're at risk. And why are they at risk? Because college
is big parties.
Exactly, Tommy. College life is like, as we talked about Rite of Passage, college life is about, as much as that, getting pissed drunk, having the fun, So if you're a person in recovery and you're just finding your feet and you want to get your degree and you want to rebuild your life, there's no better place to do it than to get a degree. But there's a major risk there. So the people in Texas, in that university, recognized this as far back as the 70s. And they said, right, any person that is in recovery is going to be supported on this campus. So out with that, there's hundreds of them now. And we're trying to kind of get them going in Ireland as well. It's basically, it's not much. You're literally just saying, we want to recognize that there are students in college campuses who are in recovery from addiction.
And that brings me to this point. When I was out in MTU, CIT at the time,
degree,
there was nothing there for me.
Yeah.
And I actually felt a little bit overwhelmed at times with the amount of talk that was going on. And you'd get the poor me's. You get the poor me's because people are young people. No, I was a mature student. I was in my mid-30s at the time, and you'd have young people talking about how they got on the night before, and I was saying, fuck, why couldn't I have had opportunities like this, But understanding as well, this is where I am in my own life, and I often wondered, and I asked in the Access Centre, like, where's the recovery? Like, where's the ANNA?
Yeah.
Like, there's 20,000 people here on this college.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? It's a community. If you go up the Knocknaheely and the Churchfield area, like, there's probably 20,000 people there, but there's probably 8 or 9 meetings, maybe 20 or 30 meetings a week, but 8 or 9 different settings where you can get a meeting, So it actually does not make sense. And the other side of it then is this. The amount of alcohol and drugs that's consumed in colleges, right, is unbelievable,
Yeah.
right? And I seen it from my own eyes. I see young lads, right, coming in from the countryside, staying in digs in around the city, in around the college, and it's like they have no mother or father now leaning over them, looking at what they're doing and keeping an eye on them. They have a free role. They can stay up all night, do what they want, and they're introduced to maybe binge
Drugs,
drinking and
yeah.
drugs for the
Right.
first time.
Yeah.
And you know what? It might give them something. It might give them that something. And there's no one there then.
To support.
Because the amount of them that fell off the course in the first year.
Yeah.
I mean, Declan.
The dropout
There was
number
three
is
of us
huge.
left out of 17 year. I swear to
Wow.
God.
Yeah.
There was 3 of us left going into third year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the first year, I'd say about 8 we got
Dropped out. Yeah.
because
it's such a transition, because they've gone from being, say, minded in school to now, as you've said,
Yeah.
I'm out there and I can do what I want. They don't know how to manage it.
Yeah.
But getting back to, I'm glad you're on the same page. Like, it doesn't make sense that there's not supports, because it's where it happens, you know. So
who's it up to? Is it up to the college?
yeah,
Or is it up to
it's up to the
is it
university.
Is it up to NA? They put meetings within there.
Yeah.
Like
It doesn't even have to be NA or A. It doesn't even have to be true,
just
like
has
a
to be some
fellowship.
service to help
Yeah,
support.
exactly. So the good news is that there was a phenomenal study done in Ireland in 2021, and this is important information to be aware of. Like, so they did a study called "The Drug Use in Higher Education in Ireland." That was the title. It's called a Dewey study, and they interviewed, I think it was 9,000 was the number of students that took this survey, and 40%, lads, said that drug use was part of life in college. 40% said it's just what we do, right? So that says like 4 out of 10 are using.
And you know what? It's probably bigger.
It's way known because they don't want to say.
Yeah.
So they don't exactly. It was underreporting. So, but the other thing, what caught my eye, which was one of the big reasons I wrote a paper on this after, is that in that survey they found 800, I think, students in recovery. So there was 800 students who basically wrote down, you know, I'm in recovery, so I don't use alcohol or drugs. But they were noted as a really vulnerable population, and that they recommended supports be established for this unique sort of population in all these universities, that they were extremely vulnerable after the pandemic again, because all the NA and AAs were shut down. So it was one of the big recommendations of that study. And they actually said, like, we recommend that every university in Ireland appoint someone to establish these programs for students in recovery, so that they have somewhere when they're in university and they're going through what you mentioned. Like, they're in classrooms every day and there's young lads, you know, coming in talking about partying, and it's triggering for them. So if they have somewhere on campus where there might be a meeting, there might be a get together, but they're safe. It's a safe space for a person in recovery. And I think the reason we're not seeing it, this is just my feeling, I still think it goes back to stigma. I think universities are, like you said it yourself, it doesn't make sense. It literally, they need to be serving them. In my opinion, it's no different than supporting students with autism or supporting students with any other kind of
ADHD or dyslexia. Yeah.
You just need to recognize these people, that they are on your campus, and that they could do with a little bit of support.
And the support for somebody that's an alcoholic or a drug addict is a matter of life or death.
Yeah.
If you need to look at it, it can be life or
Yeah,
death, because
that's
for
how
an addict
important
to
it
go
is.
back out or an alcoholic, they mightn't get back
Yeah.
in.
And
you know?
that's the bottom line, Timmy.
And
That's the
has
bottom
that
line.
all been noted in the research?
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Like, and basically what's really interesting in because these students are supported in America, That's where all the research is. We can't research what's not
Mm.
here. We can't research students in recovery in Ireland because we don't have them. We don't know them. Whereas in America, there's a big database. And what happens, which is really interesting, students in recovery do really well in college. You're an example.
Yeah.
They actually, very often, they do better than the average person. So that's what I'm
Because
studying.
they know what they want.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they've been through, like we talked about trauma, they've been through hardship, and they know this is it, like, and they actually excel. So that's what's sad. Like if universities would just take that step of being able to come out and say we support students in recovery, it would actually be a very progressive step.
And is that going to be a role that you might? No, you're kind of caught in what
Yeah.
you're kind of maybe in a little
I'm
bit
in
of
limbo.
yes.
Yeah, I have
So
one foot in America.
so that question probably isn't relevant. No, but
it's something that I'm passionate about Ireland.
yeah,
You know, this is home. This
Well,
is where I want to
yeah.
raise my daughter eventually.
Yeah.
So I would like to come back. It's
It-
something I would love to see.
Is there somebody from your research in the last 2 years? Is there somebody here in Ireland that's pushing an initiative like that at the moment?
Yeah,
Is there?
there is movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause that's
And
important. And even if
yeah.
there was, I'd like to even back it myself a little bit.
We'll definitely
Because I think
link
that
in.
is absolute. Because a lot of people who go back into education, mature students, are people who are maybe in recovery.
Yeah.
Okay, and didn't get an opportunity to educate themselves in the early years because they had stuff going on from, and so
it's huge.
It's
so
important. I think
Yeah.
it's absolutely critical, and it's
Yeah.
a great point to
And
make.
if you want to, like, if society wants to support recovery, they need to start doing it at a systems level. That's what Dr. Ivor spoke to you about. Like, society has to make, has to support recovery, because the individual can do so much, but if society is still saying, "Oh, you're still an addict," like that has to change.
And your PhD,
Mm.
you mentioned already what it's about. Are you finding a lot of new things within your research about addiction?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, the first thing I'll say to you is that this is a really understudied area.
Okay.
It's phenomenal, really, to think that, like, there's not many people researching students in recovery, right? But what we do know is that when they get into education, I'd be interested what you may have felt this, Timmy. What I found in my research is that when students or individuals, will say, in recovery, when they decide to go back to college, it's a massive thing because they don't feel they're worthy. Right,
Imposter syndrome.
Major imposter syndrome. So they're like, they're looking around the gates of fucking UCC or Trinity or wherever it is they are, and they're like, I don't really fit in here, right? And those first few months are crucial.
Yeah.
Because not only are they feeling that imposter syndrome, but they're also like, everyone around them's drinking. So it's a really delicate spot. But if they get through that and they start to thrive and they start to see, geez, man, I'm after getting an A or a B. And that person that sits beside me is not in recovery, but she was asking that question I did in my head. So basically what happens, lads, is the self-stigma reduces.
Yeah.
Majorly.
And the confidence starts to get better.
And self-esteem goes up, right?
Yeah.
And then they start to see, geez, I'm actually a normal person.
Yeah.
Like, that's
So
the findings.
They go from the unnatural into it becomes the norm.
The norm, exactly.
Yeah, because they're coming from an environment where
Yeah.
they would have college may have never been an
option.
in their
Yeah.
in their
So
vision
now,
for
like,
their life.
it's a transformation. Like, I believe myself that recovery, that's why the word recovery to me, like, I just believe we're all in recovery from
Everyone,
something.
and recovery from everything,
from life,
from
trauma,
everything,
and from
everything.
life,
Life.
exactly. So what happens when people in recovery who have that sort of aspect of their life go into education, it can really transform them. It's powerful. Like, education is an intervention. It's like a passport. So what happens then, as I said, is when they're supported, they flourish.
Yeah.
their identity, that's the big thing. Their identity starts to change. They're like, Jesus, I'm okay. I'm allowed to be in the world. I
That
have a
takes
space
time.
in the universe, you know?
It takes time, but when it clicks,
Absolutely.
it's like, whoa.
And what happens?
I'm well able for this.
Yeah. And then they get momentum,
Yeah.
right? Because the results are coming back. And what's very important too, lads, if there's a professor that might know your story and that they show a little bit of interest in and kind of keep you on track, makes a huge difference as well.
100%. I completely relate to
Yeah.
that. I had a few guys that I'd have a good conversation. They weren't like they were men that were interested in the same things. I started off doing something different to what
Yeah.
I finished off doing. I started off doing a course called Craft Wood Technology with business.
Yeah.
So it was carpentry and joinery integrated with business modules for somebody that wanted to go out and start their own carpentry and joinery company or bespoke in any area of carpentry and joinery. And I went from that into construction management in year 3, where all my lecturers were men, maybe my own age or older than me, and we all had experience in the construction industry. They're all engineers or carpenters before on site, and I good conversations with these men, like, and I really felt comfortable, and I really felt like it fit in, and that was something that, with me having the life experience already, you know, just as in life experience, and being able to, and being somebody has been around the block, you know, I'd often have conversations about my own life as well, and they say, whoa, they'd be blown away. This is before the podcast came out, and they'd be blown away, and then they'd be very interested, and sometimes you might get one of them ask you a question about something, you know, maybe around alcohol, you know, and it might be directly for themselves. It might be a brother or a sister, or even a daughter or a son, you know. So I had some great relationships with the lecturers out in the MTU, and I just wanted to mention that the lecturers out there in MTU are amazing, and they are everywhere. Even in UCC, I had some of oh my God, my mindfulness lecturer there, Pat O'Leary and Pascal, the both of them, like, have so helpful for me in the last 2 years.
And it's the likes of them professors that would get behind a movement for just a support base.
Yeah.
It's not much, you know. Yeah. But what you described there is actually proven in the science that, you know, when a student in recovery is supported, again, it goes back to the childhood needs. When you have someone, you know, showing an interest in you, you just flourish, you know.
Do you know,
small things.
It was something we talked about the last time. It was the impact of childhood trauma on education.
Yeah.
Break that down small bit for me. Like, we spoke a little bit about it already, about the staring out the window or worrying about how your mother is at home or your father or somebody else is. Like, but for me, being in there,
in class,
and just not having the ability to actually trust as well, that was a big thing for me. Trust
adults,
you know. And the other thing is, like, looking at everything that's happening, not being able to take a compliment from anybody because you're thinking that there's an alternative motive to it, you know. It so. And then with the education system back then, not actually understanding what's going on for a lot of children around the different learning differences, and that made things a lot better. And because of my own stuff, I would have been very disruptive. And I was happiest at the back of the class, looking out the window or scribbling on my hand, or messing with someone in the classroom, or being up in the principal's office sitting outside there, or whatever it may have been. And that was just that. Listen. That was just the way it was back then. But the impact of trauma on education was massive for me. Yeah. I mean, it was even though I had stuff going on already with the educational stuff, the impact of the trauma was a really big deal because of the worry. And you said the worry a while ago, and that brought something up for me, and it's been lodging with me for the last 20 half an hour. Okay. I used to be fucking terrified.
Yeah,
Tommy, I used to be terrified of what was going on to. We'd come home and my mother would be rocking up and down the couch, like this, you know. And you'd be walking in the door and you'd be fucking shitting walking in because you actually don't know what's.
You know, I always had that fear as well. Yeah, you didn't just walking home like, what
Yeah, what am I going home to?
I hope she's going to be okay. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's what
okay,
that's what we lived with in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
We lived with that, and like, and I said, so I met one of my old teachers recently, a lovely, absolute lovely lady, and I had a chat to her, and I was just saying, like, you know, when I look back and I think about the stuff that was going on for me, and I just said, did you not notice anything? She said to me, I know there was stuff going on for you, right? And this is what everybody needs to hear. I knew there was stuff going on for you. We all did. But we didn't know the extent, okay? But also, on another hand, I was dealing with a lot of shit at home too. Like in my own family with kids and husband or wife or whatever else. And did you know, and I was saying, fuck, I actually never even really thought about it like that, because we always think it's about us and why we didn't.
Yeah.
We forget to actually think about what actually is going on for anybody, the people that do you know what's going on in their lives as well? Like,
everyone kind of kept out of everyone's business as well back then. You know, they didn't want to get involved. And,
Yeah.
they
Or
didn't.
afraid.
Yeah.
And plus, what was going on at home, you'd never say. You'd never go out and say, "This is what's going on for me at home." That was alien.
I think there's a really that's a really broad question, like the impact of childhood trauma and a child, because it's
tricky.
the trauma could be so many different elements. It could be different stuff. It could be sexual, physical, emotional. It could be all these other different things, and then what way is that going to show then within the environment of the school, and how is it going to affect them? For me, for one, I was the daydreamer. I was just constantly worried because I was living in my head at this time, because I was cut off emotionally.
Absolutely.
because of the environment I had to survive in.
Yeah.
You know, so probably like yourself, you know,
you're up here.
Oh, constant.
Yeah.
Lived there constantly, and I struggled with everything, and I struggled with everything going forward in my life. The sexuality side of it, friends.
Yeah.
I had no friends. And anybody, I didn't know how to be a friend.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Remember Tommy growing up? I was very kind of odd, like in that way.
In the garden, fixing bikes all day. And
I needed something always to take up my time.
Because it sounds to me, Timmy, like that you didn't trust people. You didn't trust the world.
And you know what, Declan, if I'm going to be very, very brutally honest, that's still there.
Yeah.
I have people that I do trust wholeheartedly, and I could say that. No. But do I?
Yeah.
Do you understand me?
The real
core of me.
Yeah.
Do I?
Yeah.
Because I feel like people are just going to let me down, like I was let down. And that's one of the core kind of.
And you're always
going to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
And I am, and it's like, I'm going to fucking tell you, fuck off before you. You know,
that's your guard.
Because I have to protect that. That really fucking.
It's your core wound. It's your original shattering of the self.
Yeah.
You know, because it's very clear, like that your sense of the world was, I can't trust no one here.
Mm-hmm.
This place is.
Because it was coming from different angles. It was coming from the street, the school, the family, the family environment here, you know, and because of the poverty that we lived in, like we dressed with rags, like my mother, God help us, she fucking had nothing, girl. Do you know, she had nothing, we had nothing, and food, we were malnourished as well, because she didn't have much to get to feed us with. No, we were helped out. We had some fantastic neighbours, let me tell you.
We had to.
You know, they were good people.
But I do have a question for you in that. When you describe that, what was going on for you, right?
Emotionally.
Yeah. You've described it for me.
Yeah.
But do you think, like, knowing that the hardship that you had as a little child, do you think it was reasonable for you to be able to go into school and get your work done when this kid beside you went home to a lovely warm dinner, warm clothes?
And you know what? That's such a great point, right? And I'm just going to point this out, right, for people.
It's important.
The reality of this, okay, that I could have been born into that other family, and that boy next to me being born into my family is so easily fucking.
Fine line.
It could happen so easily, you know, and it's just about at the end of the day. Not even about luck. It's just about the environment you're born into. You know. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you this though.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
Do you know why?
Yeah. Sure, look.
Because I can cope today.
You've the empathy,
Oh, for fuck's
awareness,
sake.
courage. Look what you're doing for
I have my
people.
brother back in my life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my other brother.
Yeah.
I know. No, we're only learning what it is to be a family.
Yeah.
We did not what it was to be like. We had no family, you see.
Yeah.
We had no family growing up.
see just once a month.
Yeah.
You know?
Draw.
But growing up, Tommy,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we didn't really kind of feel like we had family because we didn't have family around us too much.
Yeah.
And when they were there, we didn't.
Yeah.
We had no attachment. You see,
Yeah.
we didn't feel connected
Yeah.
like everybody. They connected with each other.
Yeah.
We didn't feel like that we belonged.
Yeah.
You know,
And you
because
touched on attachment, like
you know.
that's the
Yeah.
bottom line. You know,
Yeah.
that's what you spoke to that Gabor Mate here,
Yeah.
Van Vessel van der Kolk. They'll all tell you that that's where you learn that the world is a secure place or an insecure place. If you get that safe attachment with your caregivers in those really early years, your brain literally is built according to those relationships. That's how your brain is actually built, according to the environment. You're born with a certain amount of genetics and a DNA and a makeup, but it actually forms according to the environment. So if your little infant self's environment is, scary, then you're growing up with this lens, this perception. This isn't safe. So you're always planning and plotting to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
That's why you have people that are called control freaks.
For me-
That's where it comes from.
For me, then I was
Yeah.
running.
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 Yeah.
And we've only come up found that, Tommy, recently when we've been talking about different things like relationships and stuff.
Yeah,
Like-
I can't. It's like I won't let no one get in or hurt me or.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you know,
What I'm saying?
Timmy, like you described you put up an armor, like so you went into fight mode, and you were kind of like flight,
Yeah,
and the brain goes into fight, flight, or freeze,
And-
where you just and finally fawn.
Tell us
Come
something
back,
about
please.
fawn, please, Declan.
Yeah, so like the four kind of trauma responses that we know about are the fight. So we might fight if the bear is coming at us. We'll either fight, flight, we'll run away. It makes sense. If the bear is after you, I'm going to run from it.
If
Right.
it's a bear, I'm running as fast as I can.
And you could also fawn, or sorry, freeze. You could just like numb out. And then the other one is fawn, and that's an interesting one. It's kind of like if you're a child, you can't fight. Say if the adult is the problem, and you're only a little child, you can't fight. You can't run away because you might be only 2 or 3. So you'll either freeze, and that's why people dissociate.
Yeah.
They numb out. They're checked out because the body can't take it. So it actually, lads, the body
Blank.
Yeah.
Blank.
Yeah.
It's
The
like
bo-
a blank canvas.
Yeah. So the brain has its own anesthetic, and that's what happens. It protects you, so you're numb. The other one then is fawn. It's like you look at the situation like the only way I'm going to get out of this is be really nice. If I'm really nice, then I'm safe because they'll like me or they'll accept me. And that's why you have people pleasers, because they're afraid like that they're going to be, rejected. But the thing is, lads, the past is over, right? Your past is over. But the trauma, if it's not processed, you still carry out those ways subconsciously. Do you understand? So you might still be kind of like on the go, like even though, things are fairly steady now. But our brain, if the brain isn't processed, if the brain doesn't know time, so it might think, oh, I'm still in childhood here, like, so I have to have this guard up, or I have to be really nice to everyone, have to make sure everyone's okay. They're all responses that the brain is doing.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I never really heard that, the fawn one, before I heard of it. The other
people
ones.
pleasing. Do you know what? One little thing on it. You'll see it where, say, if there's a kidnapper, right, kidnaps someone, and they're with the hostage. So they're a hostage to the kidnapper, and to survive,
They will
they
fawn.
might start being really nice to them. And then what you get, which is phenomenal, interesting to me, is Stockholm syndrome. It's where the person becomes kind of so attached to the kidnapper that they're afraid to leave because they've fawned for so long for their survival. If I'm really nice, I'll be safe. And then when they can actually go, they don't really know how to.
That's amazing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
That has happened a lot in this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, it's the brain's way of like survival. So just really come back to the learning thing. When you're in school, your brain is not in a learning zone. Your brain isn't able to sit there and go, fucking X plus Y equals
Your
2.
brain's not even in
Sure,
school.
you're checked out. Your brain's not even in school.
It's gone.
Tommy.
It's,
So then the teacher said, why aren't you looking in the book? If only they knew where your head actually was, you know. And that's why I'm passionate about trauma-informed approaches to teaching and learning. That's where my passion is, and that's what I'll do to answer your question as well. It's to help teachers recognize the symptoms, or not the symptoms, but the behaviors, so that they are going to see that kid and they'll be like, well, maybe that kid isn't trying to piss me off. Maybe they're just fucking terrified. Or maybe there's all this sort of stuff going on.
And it is easy to spot.
Man, it is
so easy to
It is
spot.
when you're in it.
Yeah.
But for people who haven't had that experience, it's natural to you and me. But for teachers who maybe, didn't have any of that experience, they might just look at that kid, right, and go, he's a dickhead and he's wrecking my head and I'm going to give him 100 lines now.
Yeah.
Which then obviously sends him into a bigger fight or flight, you know what I mean? So the movement I'm interested in is trauma-informed approaches to teaching and learning. That's where, for me, that's where we have to go, and because of the pandemic, it's even more important. It's not like, and I'm a teacher, lad, so I'm the first to say, and I know how teachers are probably, if they're listening or listen, they'll say like, but I'm a teacher. I'm not a psychologist. I went to college to be a teacher. I didn't, sign up to be a fucking trauma therapist. And I get that as well. I understand that because teachers are really bogged down, they're stressed. And now you're coming in and you're saying, hey, you have to be trauma informed. It's hard to get them to buy in. But if you actually, if you teach it to them and then they get it can change their careers. Like Dr. Katrina O'Sullivan, she's brilliant, and she's really leading it in Ireland. And she does it brilliantly because she talks of her own lived experience. I mean, she's a doctor got her doctorate in Trinity, and the poverty and pain she experienced. So I'm glad she's here in Ireland and that she's leading it, because anyone that reads her book, Poor, any teacher, I couldn't recommend it more than that.
We done a podcast about her.
Yeah.
Lovely woman.
Dr. Lambert as well. There's Dr. Ivers. There's super people in Ireland. Lynn Ruan, phenomenal. These, to me, they're my heroes, without doubt, straight out.
They're powerful women.
To me, they are the heroes in Ireland in social.
And it's women like that. It's women
that can
like
drive
that.
the change.
Yeah, drive it, because women play a massive role in that stuff, because with us men, we can drive stuff too, but women will drive it as well, and they'll drive it a lot further because the emotional connection that they have to stuff. Like when I done the podcast with Katrina above in Liston-Varna.
Oh yes, that's right. It was a live one.
I sat on the stage with her and I felt every single thing. I could relate to all her story, the whole lot. And it was a really, really heavy mixed emotion and conversation for me, and obviously her. But I knew that moment, like, that she was like, this girl is gonna change a lot of people's lives.
And she is.
She's
doing it.
She's gonna do a lot.
She cares.
She do.
Yeah.
She's an amazing woman. So like the other ladies as well. So shout out to them.
Big time.
But listen, Declan's
it's been
been
great.
an amazing.
Yeah.
Great to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
down to us.
Yeah.
And you're here on your holidays at the moment.
Yeah.
So you've 2 years left in the PhD, is it?
Yeah. So I've 2 years done, and about another year and a half should do a lot of it.
And will you, I'd love if you stayed in touch and give us
Absolutely.
some of the
Well,
research.
listen, if it wasn't for your podcast,
Yeah.
Dr. Ivers,
Yeah.
I'd never have went
And
to
listen,
Texas.
As you said, it was meant to be.
Maybe, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everything is meant to, like there's science and everything.
Yeah.
And you follow the science.
Yeah, lads, the work you do is powerful, and it's my honor to be here. And I love your courage. And I love, for me, what I love most is your interest in education and the advocacy you're doing and the guests you're getting in. Like you're changing lives.
Thank you.
You're changing lives. You're changing how people perceive the education system. You're making room for, everyone.
Yeah.
It shouldn't, there's, it's not always meets the eye, and you're doing that. You're shedding light on lots of really important stuff.
Thank you.
One last thing as well.
Go on.
There's a great charity in Cork that do brilliant work that I'd like to mention is My Canine Companion.
No, I'm well.
Yeah.
My wife knows him well.
Yeah.
She works, does a bit of work.
They're brilliant. So I would have had one of their dogs as well in the school.
Yeah.
That would have worked with the kids with ADHD and ASD, and phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
A dog can do so much more than an adult could do. So
The
brilliant charity.
companionship,
Yeah.
feelings,
And the trust,
the regulation,
the safety.
for a child through a dog is
Yes.
powerful stuff.
The emotional regulation. Yeah.
Powerful.
So, like a dog, the trust and the relationship between the dog and the kid, it can just regulate the kid so much easier and quicker than a teacher could,
And
or a
any
counselor,
adult.
or any adult.
Any adult.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just think My Canine Companion are a phenomenal organization. They're Cork as well, and I just wanted to shout out to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, blessings.
So listen, thank you so much again.
Thank you,
for coming
guys.
down, Declan. We're very grateful. And thanks, Tommy.
Yeah, really honoured to meet you.
Unreal.
Tony's sitting there since about
Thanks,
5
Tony.
o'clock.
Yeah.
Tony, thanks. So listen, wish you all the best going
Thanks.
forward, whatever you're doing, and stay in touch,
you.
please. And if you ever need anything from us, let
Yeah.
us know.
Yeah.
So listen, thanks a million, everybody, for listening to the Long Way Back podcast. Again, I hope everybody's well, and if anybody was affected by anything that was said here tonight, you can contact us directly on the social medias. Or Declan, how can you be reached?
I'll leave the email with you.
We
Yeah.
leave the email, and there'll be a link to some of your work. I'd like to leave the link as well to the PDF, your research
Absolutely.
in it as well. I think it's fantastic. It's about the importance of services within colleges, for people in recovery. So we leave it at that, lads. So thank you so much again for everything and listening to us, and we're very grateful. And if you don't follow us already, try to follow us on any of the social medias or the YouTube, and we'd be very grateful. And if you have any recommendations on any guests, let us know. Thanks a million. God bless.